and I'm a theatre director.
So I'm Tim Cowbury, and I am a writer and theatre maker.
We wanted to focus on one specific area of migration, and that was the UK asylum system. There's a lot more to say with the theatre piece, and also a lot more to get angry about.
I was aware that we live in a society that is full of probably misplaced assumptions about migrants. Knowing that was a problem, and that media representation was a big problem in how we understand or deal with people who come to the country needing our help, meant that although I kind of included myself in those assumptions, I was also self-conscious about them and wanting to tackle the assumptions.
I have always been interested in themes of migration. I am a linguist myself. I speak several languages, so I've had the opportunity to live and work abroad, and on a really fundamental level I find it quite unjust that I can do that and other people can't, purely based on the fact that I have a British passport.
Meeting people did remind me that first and foremost they're people. That you can suspect everyone who comes into the country and suspect that they're cheats and that they're frauds and all of that, or you can kind of romanticize them and say that they're refugees. And I think there's still a lot of assumption there about a certain kind of story that once I met people I realized it's always more complicated and less black and white than we want those stories to be. When you meet people, it confounds that a little bit, because they're just people.
Molly Jackson, and I'm a secretary for Women for Refugee Forum. I've been in the UK now 14 years, and I'm enjoying it because I'm safe. I was once an asylum seeker. My husband was in the army, but then when they overthrew the government, he refused to work with the government. Also, my uncle was the president. Those countries, if they overthrow, they want to finish all the relatives and all, even if you had done nothing wrong. I was abducted. I stayed in the bush for 2 months, where we were beaten, let me say torture, rapes, and all that. And my children were abducted. Up to now, I don't know where they are. Sometimes because of what I went through in that bush, I would just wish they were dead, because if they are alive, they are reliving what happened to them in that place. Because it is not a good place to be, and those people are not human. They beat you, raping anybody. A lady with her 3-month-old child, unfortunately they were both raped, and the woman hanged herself and her baby. I would do that. If anything happens even to my, when I came out, I thought, why didn't I kill myself? Thinking maybe because I had the hope that I might see my children. If I had known I was coming here. Without my children, I wouldn't have boarded the plane, because when I didn't board it, I don't know how I even got in, because I was really in and out of a coma. And I came here, and then they treated me for 2 weeks before I went. They took me to claim asylum, because I was really sick. 2 months was a long time for torture and all that, and seeing your friends dying. It makes you lose everything, lose your mind. So that is what happened to me.
We've been working with migrants who are also artists in their own right, so poets, painters, writers. We've had lots of people in the room, and they were able to engage with it on a very artistic level, which was, to be honest, even more rewarding, because then we start speaking as a room of artists as well.
It was actually really interesting because it wasn't just a kind of, oh, this is really great response. We actually had quite a good debate amongst us and the actors and the people we brought into the room about what the piece was doing and how it was working, and that was great. Partly I think that happened because we had people come into the room who were themselves creative people. It wasn't a kind of random drop-in. There was a sense that those people were keen to kind of help us finish the play and work on it. There's something sadly kind of invisible about the asylum experience of being in the country. It was really good to be challenged to put that on stage.
There are already 3 characters, and they're called A, B and Serge. They are trained performers we're working with there. In terms of the potential participation of asylum seekers and refugees within the piece, the people who would eventually be involved in the final production wouldn't really be playing a role such as A, B or Serge. They would be there as themselves, because the idea is to humanise the system, so the audience members see both a piece that's about the asylum system, and then within the room and scattered amongst the audience are people who have had some experience of the system themselves, who won't stand and give their story or exactly what they've been through, but might eventually have a cup of tea with the audience member, or might share a personal detail, or just relate to them as a human being, with the aim of humanising the people who go through this system.
I became really interested in how we can move from a very human interaction to one that denies the sort of the central character, who is called Serge, who's the asylum seeking character. Not how can his story necessarily just turn into something else, but how can the way that he's treated become less and less human. Gave us 2 characters who could represent the different kinds of assumptions people have about refugees or migrants coming to this country.
What's been really interesting is meeting people and discovering how they then, once they've been through the system and have been granted asylum and are refugees in the UK, how they continue after that, really.
This play was Mark, because that man had everything: family, businesses, cars, but he lost all of them. So how could that person just leave the country? Well, if those things were not taken away from him, how could he just leave? They will really teach people that asylum seekers are not people who have come to grab the lands or to kill. They have come to take our lands or our businesses. But they are not like that. They have come to do their work also. They can work and earn their money. Because if, like me, I've been given that opportunity, I will not sit and wait. And these people will never want to sit and get the things, because they have been brought in a way. They work for their living. But asylum seekers are forced out of their country, out of their everything they have. They lose them. That detention center now is not good for these other people who are real asylum seekers. They came for protection, to throw somebody in detention, and detention is not just detention, it is a jail. And these young people are there, they are running mad, they are losing their minds. They should be given chances to, because some of them might be doctors, you never know, because you can't judge a book by the cover. Like me, nobody would have known that I am a journalist. I'm also a writer, I've published a book.
You do have people who kind of almost agree with the system and how it is, which is certainly one point of view. And you also have people who campaign to make it better, to make it fairer, to make it more just, and still not enough knowledge or awareness of the things people go through and the reasons why people seek asylum. But what we're doing, I hope, is really scrutinising the system that is in place. I think often stories are expected to be without flaws, to be A to B, rather than A passing through all different avenues. Because what we found is that people's stories are often very complex, very painful. Details get missed because of the trauma of having to remember that, or because memory does funny things when you want to not relive something or think about something every single day. And so I think our piece really wants to get to the bottom of what people go through and what the UK asylum system expects of people and their stories. And I don't think those two things necessarily match up.
It's about what happens to a person when they have to rely on their story and telling their story within a system that doesn't really allow them to tell that story.
I genuinely do believe that when we finish this piece, it is for everybody, because what we're talking about isn't one person's story necessarily, it's about what the system does to someone's story and where those influences come from. I think that's something that everybody, regardless of their opinion of both asylum seekers and refugees and the system, will be challenged by in terms of coming to see the piece.
One of the big things I want audiences to take away from it is this thing of the system not allowing people space to do what it supposedly asks them to do. So I want to show that there's a paradox there, that it has this smiling face which says we welcome you, tell us your story. And migrants come into that kind of smiling face and find that actually what it's saying through its smile is you're not going to be allowed to stay, and we'll do whatever we can to make that the case. And that there's a really unsettling paradox in that. So I want the audience to be uncomfortable and unsettled. I suppose that's where the piece hopefully will humanise refugees and migrants, but also humanise the sort of representatives of the asylum system. But then by the end of the piece, we are more in an interview setting where someone is supposedly being asked to tell their story but doesn't actually get given the space to do that.
I want to touch the audience with is I'd like them to leave the theatre reflecting on their own nationality and also their relationship and attitude towards people who have different nationalities other than their own, and how that might be affected by what's out there in the media, how we're encouraged to interact with strangers or people that we consider different to us or other to us.
I saw how they were acting, and it was beautifully done. Beautifully done.
We're actually saying we're all implicated in this because we all have assumptions about who people are. We all expect that someone could tell their kind of traumatic story and gain our sympathy enough that we allow them to stay, and that doesn't allow people space to be human. beyond the point. Never mind what it's like to go through that process of interviews. That's not an identity, and I suppose being an asylum seeker, being a tragic victim, is not an identity that people can build on. So I want people to take that away.
They are human beings, and they were tortured where they came from. They were really badly treated. I think these people can treat them humanely because they have hearts.